Well, for Palestinians in Rafah, in an already very difficult situation, it's looking all the more desperate as Israeli tanks close the border crossing that was the main artery for humanitarian aid trucks into Gaza. The UK-based Palestinian playwright and director Ahmed Najjar is monitoring the situation very carefully because his two sisters and their families are currently in Rafah. He joins me from London. Ahmed, thanks for the time. I understand that your two sisters and their families are currently in Rafah and they're in tents. They've already been displaced quite a bit. I gather they went from the north to the south in one displacement already. It's happened a couple of times. What are the conditions in which they are living now from what you know?
That's right. Currently they are in Rafah, and I spoke to one of them this morning at 12 o'clock their time, actually. I mean, they're very confused on what they should do because there are some people evacuating at the moment from I think from the east of Rafah. That some people have been evacuating, and my sisters are kind of in the middle of Rafah, and they're seeing people are leaving, and some people are confused, don't know where to go, and they've been trying to figure out a place where to go since yesterday. But unfortunately, they haven't been lucky to figure out a place where they would be able to go. So they're still in Rafah. I mean, they are kind of hoping that it all comes to an end. There will be a ceasefire, because yesterday people were celebrating and very happy, thinking that there would be a ceasefire. But sadly, Israel has rejected that and decided to press on and invade Rafah. So their situation is unbearable and confusing, and they're obviously very scared.
You know, Ahmed, there's a lot of sort of information, misinformation, propaganda. There's always two sides to a story. Whichever you think is right, it's pretty intense. The Israelis say we've provided safe zones people can go to, that it's Hamas who's holding back on the humanitarian aid and selling it at extortionate prices. And of course, you know, on the Palestinian side, there is the fact that it's considered to be a major humanitarian crisis. The UN says it's a full-blown famine now, actually.
Yeah.
Based on what your sisters say, what kind of conditions are the people living in?
Horrible, horrible conditions. I mean, imagine that there are more than 1 million people living in tents, where tents are made of plastic materials and extremely hot, and not enough healthy water to drink, no proper showers, no proper baths, toilets, no facilities whatsoever. No, obviously the infrastructure doesn't exist. They're right in the middle of a sand, erecting their tent on whatever they get hold of to have somewhere to sleep. And of course, there's a scarce of food, scarce of water, scarce of medicine. There's so many people, and that's very little reporting on this. That so many people are dying of these these conditions. There's a famine broke out in the tents. That viruses spread so quickly. And that was in the winter a couple of months ago, and viruses were spreading very quickly, and people all falling sick very quickly and very easily, especially that they haven't had proper sleep and a proper meal for the last 7 months.
Is there any sense of who's in charge there?
Well, Israel is in charge. I mean, people are trying to gather information that whatever the Israeli army is giving them through the leaflets that they drop at them from the airplanes. And by the way, these leaflets they drop at them, and as we might know, that Gaza is extremely small, and so when you drop leaflets, thousands of leaflets or millions of leaflets from an airplane, they can spread across the whole of Gaza, which means that people don't know whether they are the ones who are meant to evacuate, or they just happen to have these leaflets because of a wind or something. So it's this sort of really a confusion. And definitely the one who's in charge is Israel, because they control what gets in, what doesn't get in, how much aid gets in, when the water comes in and when it doesn't. What areas they would invade, what areas they wouldn't. So the people are there to listening and trying to gather any kind of information that the Israeli army gives them.
Is there a presence of people who represent Hamas in any sense, whether political or military?
In the north, which where my parents are at the moment, and my other siblings, that they haven't seen Hamas policemen, or like we just call them the policemen, in the north until very recently, that the police have started appearing in the north of Gaza. So in the south, my sisters were saying they've seen the police, but they've never seen actually fighters. And also my family in the north, they've never seen fighters, Hamas fighters. They've never come across any Hamas fighter or seen them fighting, or seen them roaming the streets while they were armed. They were seeing some policemen, and the policemen were not armed. Bearing in mind, Israel has a very sophisticated technology that they can spot anyone walking with a weapon. So they wouldn't be really, I imagine they wouldn't be really wandering in the streets while they are armed.
It's been a very tough job for journalists to report out of Gaza. Israel has very severely restricted, obviously, reporting and the access that journalists have to the region and to the area. So I wonder if you there in the UK have a real sense in terms of imagery, and how much the people of the UK have a real sense of what is happening physically in Gaza and in Rafah right now.
I think there's a lot of people in the UK, and it seems to be also across the world, even the USA, that realizing and looking for more transparent information about what's going on. And they remember that some polls were done in the UK. The more than 70% of the population here are against what's going on in Gaza, and they want their government to call for a ceasefire immediately. We've seen the streets of London and across the UK, millions and millions of people every weekend are coming out with the Palestinian flags and against the genocide in Gaza. So I think I notice also here with the younger generation that they are much more aware of what's happening in Gaza, whereas the older generation are less aware. And I guess because they listen to the mainstream media like the BBC and others. But the younger generation, I think they are following people on Instagram and Facebook and other social media platforms, and they get the news live from Gaza, some of them. A lot of people are trying to find out themselves and see what's going on, because somehow they have lost the trust on their mainstream media and in their political leaders as well.
Right. Now, of course, there are people in the Palestinian territories who are dual national. Well, they have nationality, say, from other countries. They have, for example, American or UK passports. From what you can tell, is the British government doing anything to help British citizens who are in Gaza right now?
Well, I am a British citizen, and I have my family there in Gaza, and I have tried many times with the British government, and I have contacted I've actually have a lawyer now who is fighting with the Home Office to try and bring my family here, just like for the period of war, and then after that, when the war stops, they can go back. But the British government has rejected that entirely, and we have been also asking. There's a small community, Gazan British small community here, and we've been asking our MPs and our political leaders to follow the same scheme as the Ukrainian scheme, but they have really rejected that. Because they said it's not the same thing, and we're like thinking that actually what's going on in Gaza is far worse than what's happening in Ukraine. Yet they have issued this scheme for people who have relatives in Ukraine, for British Ukrainian people who have relatives in Ukraine to come to Britain. I think this is very, for us, is very concerning, because we're just wondering why wouldn't do the same to us as they have done to the Ukrainians, and it's alarming in a way that we are living in a country where the government could be really racist.
Ahmed, what chance is there that this increase in protests, especially among the young people there, visibly on the streets and especially across college campuses. What chance is there, with it being an election year in the UK, as it is in the US and other places, it might have some impact on the politicians? Do you hold any hope that could be the case?
I think it will have an impact. I think it's one of our biggest hopes that the younger generation now is growing up with a better better informed about what's happening in Palestine, and they have better understanding of what's going on. And you can see what's happening at the universities, mainly in the USA and also in the UK and across Europe as well, that younger people, students are demonstrating and striking at universities, demanding their universities to stop any business or any collaboration with Israel. These are very good signs. These are very hopeful, and we're extremely hopeful, and we're hoping that it progress. And let's not forget that, the Vietnam War comes the first objection, I guess, that was in Columbia University in 1968, I think. And the apartheid in South Africa, it started from universities, the boycott and movements and the demonstrations. So what's happening with the younger generation is very promising.
Ahmed, I want to thank you very much for giving us that perspective at a very personal level there of what's happening in Gaza. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.